Let's be real. We live in a world with just a ton of information. And the most important skill you can have isn't knowing everything. It's knowing how to learn anything and learn it well. So today, we're going to break down 4 really powerful techniques to help you master pretty much any skill you set your mind to.
Have you ever had that feeling? You're looking at all the books you want to read, all the courses you want to take, and you just feel swamped. It's like you're drowning in the sea of things you want to learn. Well, you're definitely not alone. It's this super common feeling, right? You want to grow, but it feels like you just don't have the time. But what if the problem isn't your schedule, but your strategy? And that's really the heart of it all. Like Warren Buffett famously said, the best investment you can possibly make is in yourself. So thinking about learning not as a chore, but as the absolute best investment you can make in your own future. Okay, let's dive into our first tool for making that investment really pay off.
All right, first up, we've got a technique from Richard Feynman. This guy was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, but he was so good at making crazy, complex ideas seem simple that people called him the Great Explainer. And his method is all about getting to that true, deep level of understanding.
This quote pretty much says it all, doesn't it? It's the whole philosophy behind the Feynman technique. See, the real test of what you know isn't if you can spit back some complicated definition. It's whether you can explain it so simply that, honestly, anyone could get it. If you can't do that, it just means you've got a little more work to do.
So how does this actually work? Well, it's these 4 steps you see right here. First, you just pick your concept, anything you want to learn. Grab a piece of paper and write down everything you know about it. Now, step 2, this is the secret sauce. You pretend you have to teach it to a toddler. Seriously, this forces you to get rid of all the jargon and use the simplest words and analogies you can think of. Step 3 is all about finding your blind spots. As you're explaining, you'll naturally hit points where you get stuck or can't quite explain it simply. Boom, that's a knowledge gap. That's when you go back to your notes or books. And finally, step 4, you review and simplify. You keep refining your explanation until it's just smooth, simple, and clear. You just rinse and repeat that loop.
Okay, so now we know how to go deep on a subject. But what about going fast? This brings us to our next guide, brain coach Jim Kwik, and his FAST method for learning. He's a big believer that learning isn't just something we do. It's a superpower we can all unlock.
And his whole method is wrapped up in this one simple acronym, FAST. But it's not just about raw speed. It's a whole mindset for taking in information like a sponge. So let's break down what each letter actually means.
The first step, and this might sound a little weird, is to forget. What does that mean? It means you temporarily hit pause on everything you think you already know about a subject. You approach it with a beginner's mind, like you're an empty cup ready to be filled. It also means forgetting all those limiting beliefs like, oh, I'm bad at math, or I can't learn this. You got to drop that baggage.
Next up, A is for active. Think about how we learned in school. A lot of it was just sitting there, passively listening. But Kwik says that's not how our brains are wired. Real learning is an active sport. You learn best when you're creating things, asking questions, taking notes, and really wrestling with the material. You can't just consume it. You got to interact with it. S stands for state, as in your emotional state of mind. And this is so huge. Here's the formula to remember. Information plus emotion equals long-term memory. I mean, think about it. Why do you remember song lyrics from like 20 years ago? Because there's an emotion attached to it. That feeling acts like a little sticky note for your brain that says, hey, this is important, save it. So if you can get yourself into a curious, positive, and engaged state, that new information is going to stick like glue. And this slide is the perfect way to think about it. Are you a thermometer or a thermostat? A thermometer just reacts to the room. If the room is boring, it's bored. But a thermostat sets the temperature. It controls the environment. And that's you. You are the thermostat. You are in complete control of your own focus, your own curiosity, and your own motivation to learn. And finally, T is for teach. Hey, does that sound familiar? Just like we saw with the Feynman technique, one of the absolute best ways to learn something is to learn it with the goal of teaching it to somebody else. It just forces you to get your thoughts in order and understand it on a way deeper level. You basically get to learn it twice. Okay, so we've got a method for deep understanding and a method for speed. But what about that biggest hurdle of them all? Just getting started. You know that feeling, right? That initial phase where you feel totally clumsy and incompetent. It's so frustrating. And that's where Josh Kaufman's work is a real game changer. So you've probably heard of this, the 10,000-hour rule. It's this idea that to become a true world-class master at something, it takes about 10,000 hours of practice. And while that might be true for becoming like a grandmaster in chess, that number is also just incredibly discouraging. It makes most of us think, why even bother starting?
But here's the good news. Kaufman flips that idea on its head. He says that to go from knowing absolutely nothing about a skill to being surprisingly good at it, it doesn't take 10,000 hours. It takes just 20. 20 hours, that's it. That's like 45 minutes a day for a month. The goal here isn't to be a world-class expert. It's just to get past that initial painful learning curve.
And Kaufman gives us 5 super simple steps to make those 20 hours really effective. First, decide on your goal. What does good actually look like for you? Get specific. Second, deconstruct the skill. Break it down into the smallest possible pieces. Third, and this is key, research just enough to get started and no more. Don't get stuck watching tutorials forever. Fourth, remove any barriers. Make it so easy to start practicing that it's harder not to do it. And finally, the most important part, you just have to commit to putting in those 20 hours of focused practice. So we have a plan for understanding, a plan for speed, and a plan for starting. What's the last piece of the puzzle? Execution. How do you actually sit down, stay focused, and fight off procrastination when it's time to practice? Well, the answer might just be sitting on your kitchen counter. The Pomodoro technique is brilliant. It was invented by a university student back in the 80s who was really struggling to focus on his studies. So he grabbed one of those little kitchen timers shaped like a tomato, Pomodoro is Italian for tomato, and he just challenged himself to focus with 0 interruptions for a short burst of time. And you know what? It totally worked.
The method is so beautifully simple. You can see the whole cycle here. First, you pick one task to work on, just one. Then you set a timer for 25 minutes and you promise yourself you're going to give it your complete, undivided attention. Then you just work. No email, no phone, nothing until that timer goes off. When it does, you get a 5-minute break. Get up, stretch, grab some water. You do that 4 times, and after that 4th round, you've earned a longer break, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. This rhythm is the secret. It keeps you focused without burning you out.
Okay, so we've looked at 4 really different techniques. But here's the thing. They aren't meant to be used on their own. The real magic happens when you start to see them as a complete, interconnected toolkit for learning anything.
Let's just quickly see how all these tools fit together. As you can see on this table, each one has its own special job, right? You pull out the Feynman technique when you're wrestling with a really tough, complex idea. You use the FAST method to get your brain in the right gear for learning quickly. You use the 20-hour rule to bust through that initial frustration of starting something new. And you use the Pomodoro technique for the daily discipline to actually get the work done. So yeah, that's the key takeaway. It's all about the synergy. You don't have to pick one, you can use all of them to build this incredibly powerful system that'll take you from confused to clear, from beginner to pretty darn good, way faster than you ever thought was possible. And really, if you remember one thing from all this, let it be this. Being a great learner is not some magical gift that only a few people are born with. Not at all. It is a skill. And just like any other skill, with the right tools and a little bit of practice, it's something that every single one of us can get better at. So I'll just leave you with this one question. You now have a full toolkit to understand, accelerate, and execute on any new skill. The only thing left to decide is, what are you going to learn first?